Thank you guys so much for coming on Live Bold and Boss Up. We're so honored to have you on, Nellie and Jocelyn. I, I I'm dying to hear the story of how you guys met and connected and just even thought about your product Sunchaser.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Would love to share, and Joss, feel free to jump in at any point. Yeah, our story is one that is full of trials and tribulations, as I imagine it is for all entrepreneurs. Jossie and I met while working on the same sales team at Google. So we were both hustling, owning a book of business, trying our best to be the top of the leaderboard, really doing that like sales grind. And both of us connected early on and recognized that there was a fire in one another. And we loved that. We loved to see each of us had such a bright spirit. We were both owning our books of business, both trying to get to the best as we could in the role. And so Jocelyn and I became really fast friends. I had actually come to Google with a mission to find my co-founder. I'd always been interested in entrepreneurship, always had been interested in business. And I had learned that you really need a good co-founder in order to make a business work. I had had a few early mistakes that taught me that. And so I came to Google really with my eye looking for somebody who could be an amazing partner. And, I think the moment I knew Joss would be somebody amazing to work with was we actually had a sales conference at Google. And, there was an opportunity where there's 400 salespeople there, and half the team is looking to sell their company for the most amount of money, and half the team is trying to buy a company for the least amount of money. And Joss sold her company for the most amount of money. I think it was like $40 billion or something crazy. And we've got like an entire
Dang.
room of salespeople who, really tenured folks, and Joss is the top of the pack. And I just remember seeing that and being like, wow, this girl is amazing. And so I think it was one day we were just so tired of our jobs. We both came together and we were like, hey, would you want to start something? And I think that was the beginning of the beginning of our brainstorming on ideas. Joss, do you want to share more about just the ideas and brainstorming and coming up with Sunchaser?
Yeah. So just as Nellie said, like once we realized, like, wait, you're feeling how I'm feeling, and like we both kind of have these dreams. And like for me, I always thought it would be later, maybe closer to my 30s when I might approach this. And then I was like, honestly, there's no time like now. And Nellie and I got together and we looked at many different ideas. So we didn't intentionally set out to start this specific business, but we knew we wanted to start a business, and we had some parameters around, health. We wanted it to be a rising market, growing in popularity, kind of a niche item, something more innovative. And we didn't know, like, we looked at different ideas, even solid perfume, or funnily enough, what we've actually seen come to the market nowadays. We were looking at like reusable, sustainable cleaning products, like where you buy the bottle and then you get shipped the insides, and then 2-3 years later we're seeing these pop up, which was really funny.
That's so
um
funny. Yeah.
yeah. And ultimately, I had a background kind of doing this thing called like biohacking, which is basically just looking at different supplements to help your day, whether that's productivity at work or sleeping at night, different ingredients, teas, herbs, supplements, whatever that might be, or even just habits, and kind of trying to optimize your health and your happiness. And through that journey, I had become familiar with some supplements, and we were looking at this alcohol alternative idea. And we were like, what if we could add some type of, function to it? We've seen the non-alcoholic beers, we've seen the non-alcoholic wines, but those really just offer the flavor without the function piece that we think people crave and are missing, especially people who enjoy the function of alcohol, but don't like the side effects, anxiety, which is like so true, or
Right.
even just being tired or feeling less than mentally, physically. So yeah, we got together and we're like, wow, I think we could do this. And it's honestly amazing back then how little we knew about the journey to come and all the intricacies that go into building a product like this. But yeah, that's kind of how we started down this road. And basically we looked at the market, we said, I think this is going to be big. I think it's been kind of rising and slept on, and that was it.
Well, I love the idea. Whenever Ash and I were talking about it beforehand, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what a great idea. I think that this is going to explode. But the thing to me that would be most challenging is whenever you, like, entrepreneurs come up with an idea or a product, you have like a thing that people can use, but this is actually something that has, like, you put in your body and people can like feel and really experience. So what challenges have you learned along the way, with this, compared to maybe like a product that you would come up with?
Oh,
Wow, that is such a good question. I mean, you said something that I think is really powerful, right? That this is going into your body. And so, number one, and this is one of our main values, is we have to honor the bodies of our customers, right? We have to put in ingredients that are made with love, that are healthy, that will not hurt your body. And so, that's kind of like the big thing that differentiates starting, say, a physical product business from a consumable, that you really have to respect that this is entering the body. Next, there's regulation, right? Like you can't just put anything out there into the market. And so we spent a really long time testing different types of supplements, checking their regulatory status across the US. There are some supplements that would be way more effective than some of the ones that we're using, but way more harmful on the body. And so there's definitely that balance that you have to be able to strike when you're starting a product like this. And then lastly, I would say like what you can say is a lot different than say a physical product, right? You can't just say, this product is going to, change your life, because that actually is going to be held up to legal scrutiny. So you really have to ensure that you're coming up with statements that are also legally verifiable, as well as, punchy and fun from a marketing standpoint.
Wow.
yeah. And I guess I would just add to that. One thing that was really great that Nellie called out is like, this is going in your body, and everybody's body is different, and everybody has a different relationship with tuning into the feelings of their body. So for some individuals who may not be used to noticing nuanced feelings, or tingles in certain parts of their bodies, or a sense of relaxation, like this might be very, very mild. And in general it is mild, and that's by intention. But for other people who may have a closer relationship with feelings in their body, they might experience Sunchaser a little bit more strongly, or just in different ways. But everybody is as unique as our ingredients, we like to say. So there's definitely that piece. And then oh my gosh, yeah, I think one thing that also we've learned, so we actually started as a canned beverage, and that was really fun. We always joke like cans are sexy, because they are. Like you love the imagery with a can. They're so capturable in imagery, and ultimately we realized like this powdered form that we're working with was really advantageous for a number of reasons, and people actually really liked the on the go feature of it. But with that came transitioning from a nutrition panel, which was on our cans and which is on most beverages and foods, to a supplement panel, which you'll find more on like teas or supplements, or maybe cough drops or something. And a supplement panel has a completely different set of regulations. And it's kind of funny because with all supplements, you see the box that states that the FDA does not support, I forget the exact language because I don't have it in front of me, but you'll see that kind of, FDA warning, this hasn't been approved. But actually behind the scenes, there is so much work and regulations and things that you have to follow, submit, test. I mean, it's a whole world of, hopefully if you're doing it right, which we strive to do everything like almost perfectly by the standards set out for safety and manufacturing and whatnot. So yeah, it's been it's been a journey. And along that, I think one other thing that we've learned that's been crazy is like, when you partner with other companies, whether it's a fulfillment center, a manufacturer, a flavor house, a formulation, legal, marketing, whatever, one thing that I learned was like, naively, I went into this thinking like, oh, they've got it. If we're partnering with someone, they own their business to execute it perfectly. And what we've learned is like, we actually have to do a lot of hand holding. Like, basically all the responsibility is on us to make sure that they do their job well, which is kind of funny. And it's like this mutual relationship. And the CEO that we brought in, Jair, he's been really helpful and instrumental in like helping us grow into that personal responsibility. And it's something that we've seen with partners at very different levels of professionalism, whether they're partners that tailor mostly startups or partners that work with really big brands. And they still have these hiccups that we're like, oh my gosh, okay, how do we partner together? And I guess similar to relationships, it's like less about what happens, but how you deal with what happens. And definitely that has improved as we've been able to work with better and better partners. But yeah, that was a wake up call.
Wow. I actually like the whole packet thing that you guys moved to instead of having it in a can. I mean, I know the can is very sexy and like marketable, but if you're like, if I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I'm gonna go to a hockey game or to a party, it's much easier to kind of have this little like packet with me that I can like discreetly dump,
Yes.
into like a cup
Yep.
of water, right? So it doesn't look like, you know,
Yeah, you can travel with it.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's this fun aspect where it's like, oh, what are you pouring in there? Like it's a conversation starter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point, like you're not gonna carry cans around in your purse necessarily.
Right. I would need a bigger purse for sure.
Yeah.
I am so curious because I'm huge on nutrition and like what I put in my body. And I have like this sticker on, in my closet every time I get dressed or whatever, put on jewelry, I see it and it says, real food is medicine. Cause I need to remind myself every day instead of like grabbing for that junk food that has like all this processed stuff in it. Right. And so I'm really curious to know, I mean, can you share like what is in it without like really, divulging this like secret?
Yeah. So I think like what's most important is probably our what we call like our heavy hitters, the nootropic supplements that are adding this functionality, this feeling to it, and that's L-theanine, which you might be familiar with from green and black teas. People say that it's kind of like the calming but energizing aspect. It's why Buddhist monks use green tea to meditate because of that L-theanine aspect. And then there's GABA and 5-HTP. And so those are all supplements. Some of them are present in plants, but they're not necessarily herbs. This isn't necessarily a tea. So those are really the three nootropic supplements. It's such a long word, but it's kind of like the appropriate way to think about them, that are adding this functionality. And then just some like sweetener, flavor, and that's really it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure from the time that you came up with the idea to now, you've had to go through some struggles or failures or things that you've learned along the way to get you to where you are today. Is there anything like in particular you can think of that maybe contributed most from something that necessarily didn't go as planned, but because of that, you ended up being more successful or learning from that, failure?
Wow. Yes, goodness, we have so many. It's funny, Joce and I were texting the other day, and just talking about how much we've survived and how much we've really been able to hustle in the face of a lot of adversity. And I think, to all the listeners out there, that's the biggest takeaway, right? Like you're just gonna have to keep going, and that's part of the journey. I would say, God, we have so many examples, but the one that comes to mind for me is really early on. So we launched in 2020, and everyone knows 2020 was a very hard year to be in business, let alone to start, to launch your business for the first time. We had planned to do this whole pre-order launch. We had been planning it since 2019. We had a whole video. We spent tens of thousands of dollars on it. Like there was a lot of build up to this. We were set to launch March 2020. As you know, March 2020 is when COVID struck, everything shut down, including our manufacturing. So, we had launched pre-orders in February. We were not able to fulfill any of the orders that our customers had pre-ordered in February until June. And so we spent 6 months really trying to keep those folks engaged, apologizing a lot, and really planning for the future. I mean, I think it was the first moment we had spent, Joce used the word before, naive. You start these businesses with a lot of necessary naivety, because if you know how hard it's going to be, you likely wouldn't start. And so this was a perfect moment where some of that innocence fell away, and we learned the realistic part of business, which is that you can't control every factor. You can't control supply chains. You can't control suppliers. You can't control macro events that happen in the economy that can shut down your manufacturing. And so that was a huge lesson and a huge learning. And I would say what we've taken from that, one is patience. Like, we started this business with the idea that we were going to hit the ground running. We were going to do $1 million in sales in the first year. We were going to quit our job. Like, we had this whole big plan. And then COVID said, okay, slow down, right? Like, take a breath. And I think that has been actually a really amazing lesson for us when we think about fundraising, when we think about supply chains, when we think about product lines. Patience has become a value that we've held close to our hearts, because we learned the hard way that when you're not patient and when you try to push too fast, too hard, you can slip up.
Wow, yeah.
That's a great value add.
Mm-hmm.
I like, from patience, what did you feel like you received, right? 2020 happened. You thought you were going full speed ahead. You had to slow down. You had to gain patience. And that's very relatable on so many different levels. How did that help? Like, I don't know, how did just kind of forcing patience, right? Forcing that ability on you. How did that help exactly? Like, did you feel like you could really comb through all the necessities of the product? And like, did the product change during that kind of waiting period, or that patience, attaining patience?
That is such a good question. I will take a stab, and then Joss, I'm so curious to get your thoughts. First off, no, the product didn't change during that period, because we were sitting by the phone waiting for our manufacturer to call us and say that they had put us on the line, that they could actually manufacture the product. So unfortunately, no, the product didn't change then, but it did change over time. And I think that was probably the number one value we gained from patience, is that, and when you're in an impatient mindset, you're looking at the short term. You're only looking at 6 months ahead, right? At best, you're like, okay, how can I just make this happen in the shortest amount of time possible? When you open up your mindset, patience gives you the ability to look at the long term. And so I think that's probably the greatest gift that we gained. We realized we can change our products over time. We can have new products come down the pipe. We can get really creative around fundraising. We don't need to sell half of our business to investors. We can actually take way more time and spend our money way more thoughtfully, because we can invest over the long term. And so I think it just gave us a more critical business mindset that we've used for pretty much every decision we've made since then. Joss, I'm curious what your thoughts are on patience and what we've gained from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Nellie and I, like, in the beginning, we were much more like leaning towards maybe like quicker solutions or fast paths, fast fixes rather. And like what patience has taught us is like, do things the right way, even if they take more time. And that's something that we've only strengthened as a value in our team here at Sunchaser. Like, if something's going to take 2 more weeks, even though we really want to get things out there, or, build more product, add more people in, like, we take that time, because we think that that's what sets us up for long-term success. And like, we've talked to many founders who have done it the quick, raise a bunch of capital, expand really quickly, and seen the repercussions of that. And yeah, I think we've been able to learn from those lessons, but patience is really, really hard. And the other thing I'd add is like, we've learned with patience that so many of your goals, ideas, expectations just disappear. And like, when we started, we would create like 5-10 year business plans, and then we'd be 2 years in and realize we're running a completely different business. Like, it's almost like not even a helpful exercise at this point. So it's like really thinking like with a long-term mindset, but acting short-term. And yeah, it's just funny. And I guess a few other things, like, to add to that with your previous question is like, I think in addition to patience, transparency is something with our customers, something that was huge in the beginning, especially during those delays. Like, as Nellie said, following up, apologizing and just being transparent, like, hey, this is what's happening. If you want a refund, let us know. If you want to stay and wait, like, let us know. Like, just always giving them the option and the transparency there, which has been really huge. And yeah, it's a crazy product. Like, in this journey, I remember the day when we considered stopping our can production and starting our powdered production. And like, to me, I was like, it was almost like an identity crisis. I was like, I don't know if I want to like be a business owner of like a powder. Like, that's not what I envisioned. That's not what I set out. And I really had to sit with that and be like, you know what? This is a journey. It's going to take many different forms. And like, who am I to like say what form it should take? It's kind of like that thing, like, listen to the market and like let that dictate, not what you think in your head, because often what we think in our head is like not correct, right? Or ill-informed. And so being open and flexible to the many possibilities of this business, the many different forms, doesn't mean that we might never do canned beverages again, but they'll probably take a very different form than they did. And like, yeah, I think that's been really important. And yeah, I think with powders, like, two of the things I remember are the packaging and the dissolvability, like, which comes with a whole different set than producing a liquid. We had so many things that just were not dissolving well. And we wanted to not use all of these different, like, things that help powders dissolve in liquid. And like, it was a very complicated process. And then even things you never expect, like the tear mark on the sachet, like on the sachet being like good enough to actually help people tear it, or are they going to have to get scissors every time? Like, we just have no idea of all these like hundreds, sometimes thousands of different little things that you have to take into account and continually improve upon after you've done it once and then seen all the problems. You try and fix those and do it again better, but patience is key.
I love that. I love both of your wisdom that you have and that you've learned along the way. It seems like with patience and transparency, those are huge lessons, like just going through the process of starting a business and, pretty much in anything that you're taking a risk on. And then, I want to know, so obviously, throughout this whole journey, leaving your stable sales job to start a new company, that's very risky. And I'm sure you've had some guidance along the way. Nellie and Jocelyn, did you have a mentor that kind of directed you and kind of pointed you in the right direction or has helped you? I would love to hear who your mentor was.
Oh, that is such a beautiful question. Early on, we didn't have mentors in the way we probably should have. Going back to our sales jobs, we actually quit those jobs December 2019, thinking 2020 was our year, and everything was gonna work out. And 6 months into 2020, we learned that actually wasn't going to be the case, and we realized it was time to get some help. And so that was the first time we started thinking we should probably find some advisors, some folks who are in the industry. We started speaking to a lot of other beverage founders at that point, which was so helpful, because I think before that we had really unrealistic expectations of simple things like profit margins, which are critical to your business, right? In terms of cash flow and the cash you'll actually be bringing in. We had founders really enlighten us that, like, hey, it actually takes way more work to get to the level of cash that you think you want to get to. You're actually going to need things like distributors and partners. And so that really helped us. And I want to just send a thank you to all of those founders who took the time to sit with us and like actually educate us on the business that we were in. We didn't know what business we were in when we started it. And then we started bringing on, actual advisors, and we've been lucky enough now to have, we have like 3 really fantastic advisors now who have really helped and guided us. And then Joce also mentioned we brought on a CEO, Jer, and he's really become like an ultimate guide to help us, bring the business to a level of professionalism, and a foundational level of strength that can allow us to grow. I will say, as a side note, as I mentioned, we did quit our jobs in 2019. We took on new jobs in 2021. And I want to just throw it out to the listeners, for anybody who is starting a business, you are allowed to have a day job while you are building your business. You do not have to quit your stable source of income while building your business. We actually learned that when we got jobs again, we were way more creative, way more focused, way more patient. We were able to give the business what it needed because we weren't trying to get money out of it so quickly. So just throwing that out there as well.
I love that.
Really nice. How about you,
Yeah.
Jocelyn?
So the mentor question is really interesting because I think like, and Nellie, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but like we've had many teachers, but we never had like, you know, from the time we were working at Google building up to this, like we never really had that one mentor. And I think it's something that I often felt like sad about, or even like looking back, I'd hear people talk about a college professor or a teacher that like helped mentor them. And I was like, man, I just never feel like I've had that. And part of that is like being shy and maybe not knowing how to form that relationship with mentors. But we have had a lot of really instrumental teachers. And nowadays, I'd almost say Jer, our CEO, and Mike, who's also in our team in marketing and kind of marketing direction, they are both kind of mentors to me. And yeah, there's so much that I can learn from. And like Jared, he's so funny. Like he is someone that loves to just pick up the phone and call you. That's how he thinks, that's how he processes. And like just realizing like every one of those calls has a little nugget, something I can just learn from him and like strengthen that. And Mike is also amazing in his own right. Like I remember one of our like weekly leadership meetings, I got off that and I was like, is Mike a therapist? Like he is so the energy he brings to the room is just so like inclusive. And like he would be like, oh, I noticed like your eyes were like maybe sensing a different emotion, like do you want to share with that? And like it was just so they're both so amazing and they're both very different and it's hilarious. Yeah, it's like this group you might never expect, like me and Nellie kind of young and rambunctious, and then like Jer and Mike like older, you know, 50s men. Like it just works so beautifully.
Balance each other out.
Yeah, no, truly. And like, yeah, I think we all, despite our differences on the surface, like we all actually have very similar values and just like a level of care and yeah, and I guess patience and transparency even with each other. That's been really beautiful. So I'd say like today there are my most active mentors, but we've had many, many, many great teachers, people who pop in and out along the way.
I love that.
What's next for you both? Are you going to continue on like building products out? Are you going to create something else? What's next for you both?
Nellie, you want to start?
I'm like thinking through this because there's so much. I would say, I mean, for anybody, it depends on when this episode airs, but if anybody's checking this out in say February, we have been actually out of stock since May of 2022. Yeah, we got featured on a really big YouTube channel, sold out of all of our inventory in 12 hours, and essentially have been spending the last 6-7 months getting the foundation right. That's when we transitioned from beverages to powder. So there's been a lot of kind of behind the scenes work building up to this point. So really the future is getting back in stock. That's kind of the first step. We're really, really excited. And I think we're a few weeks away. Next piece is really launching new flavors. We've got some fun ones coming out and really excited to share that later in the year. And then check out new form factors. We're really excited to experiment with new ways of enjoying this alcohol-free unwind. And so definitely keep on the lookout for that as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, not much to add to that. Like the future is bright. Every time we have been out of stock, we have legitimized the behind the scenes business in so many ways. And it's honestly the most frustrating, like organizational math problem, from producing to having the capital to produce to then selling that, having the revenue and being out of stock. Like it's so funny. And it's actually a problem that you see even in larger CPG brands, is like this basically supply and demand problem and managing that. So we're very excited to be in stock, new flavors, new form functions. There's so many amazing things out there, magnesium, all these things that we want to play around with. And yeah, we have big dreams. I mean, I think we all, like, one day when we were dreaming as a leadership team, we were like, Sunchaser Music Festival, or like, sponsoring like athletes or people that we really love with the product. And I think that's a dream for all of us. And as we've learned, like, that will hopefully come, and we're not going to put a distinct timeline on it, because it might be quicker, it might be longer, but we're dreaming big. So hopefully some of those live events and getting to really like integrate culture into and talking to our customers and bringing people into this world of sober curious, or just another option when you don't want to be drinking alcohol. That's really important to us, and like having that known. So yeah, big things ahead, hopefully.
Well, with both of your passion and enthusiasm and wisdom that you have and have learned, I definitely think it will happen. So I think you both have big things ahead. And for Sunchasers, I'm excited to try it.
Mm-hmm.
We can't wait till it comes in and we get to try it and share it. And we are also going to share a discount code on our show notes and in today's episode, so that way other people can try it as well.
And the discount code is LiveBold 2023, LIVEBOLD 2023. Thank you both for giving the listeners a discount code. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, for sharing this journey. It's amazing. And I can't wait to see, all the big things ahead for you and for Sunchasers.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
Nellie and Joce, thanks so much again for coming on our podcast. We just truly appreciate it. We're honored to have you on. And listeners, definitely take advantage of that discount code. It's 10%. They sell out super fast, as they just mentioned. So definitely go in there and get your product and try it out.
Until next time,
live bold and boss up.